Thank you, thank you. My name is Luke Tan, Executive Director of Chicago Innovation. How's everyone doing tonight? All right, well, we're thrilled to have you here at Innovation for the Ages. Tonight is all about celebrating, learning from, and being inspired by some of Chicago's ageless innovators. So ageless innovators, these are people who are not slowing down. If anything, they are speeding up. They are not thinking about retirement. They're thinking about reinvention. They're taking new risks. They're launching new ventures. And they're focusing on innovation in both their personal and professional lives. Tonight's event is done in partnership with three fantastic organizations, the Economic Club of Chicago, the Village Chicago, and the Retirement Research Foundation. So let's give a round of applause for our partners. And so now I'd like to introduce leaders from each of those organizations, starting with Donna Zarconi, the CEO of the Economic Club of Chicago, Diane Campbell, the founding executive director of the Village Chicago, and Mary O'Donnell, the program manager for the Retirement Research Foundation.
Well, thank you, Luke, for that great introduction, and we are very excited to be here tonight to collaborate with these outstanding institutions because we all share the values about lifelong learning, about commitment to entrepreneurship and to innovation. And I have to tell you that the Economic Club is 90 years young. How about it? Woo! And we're thrilled to have speakers here tonight that truly exemplify that continual renewal and reinvention.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Donna. So tonight, before the clock strikes midnight, another 10,000 people will turn 65. Historically, the conventional retirement age, not anymore. At the Village Chicago, we're in the forefront of creating networks to reshape what it means to be in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. We're leveraging wisdom, skill, and knowledge, often in collaboration with younger generations, to stay in the game and leave the world a better place. So together, we're navigating the new longevity.
And at the Retirement Research Foundation, we value innovation as one of our core beliefs, recognizing that innovation generates new solutions and adds value in our collective efforts to improve the quality of life for older people in America. That's our mission at the Retirement Research Foundation, and we want to thank you all for being here tonight and for joining us on this quest together. Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to recognize and thank our sponsors that are supporting tonight's event, along with supporting all of our events that we do throughout the year at Chicago Innovation. The ones that are here in attendance, I want to thank and recognize are Comcast Business, Wintrust, Vistage, Baird, Sim Chicago, Cranes, Intersection, Blue Plate, and Frost. Thank you so much for helping us with this evening's event. Okay, let's get the show on the road. I will be introducing the moderator for tonight's panel discussion, Tom Kuczmarski. Tom is the co-founder of Chicago Innovation. He's also the president of innovation consulting firm Kuczmarski Innovation. He is the adjunct professor at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, author of 6 books on innovation and leadership, and one more in the works for 2018, and also a trustee at the Retirement Research Foundation. So, ladies and gentlemen, joining me here on the SNL stage, please welcome your host, Tom Kuczmarski.
Live from Chicago, it's Innovation for the Ages. Well, we could have called it Monday Night Live, too. You know, earlier when I was walking through this space, what I really thought about was when Lorne Michaels developed this edgy and really provocative but live comedy for a national audience. That was risky and innovative, too, just like it was 16 years ago when we created the Chicago Innovation Awards. But what I really love is tonight's focus, because tonight what we're doing is really showcasing people over the age of 60 who have continued to revitalize themselves and really embrace the spirit of innovation. That is worth celebrating and learning from. So we have a great show for you tonight, and what I plan to do now is introduce each of the panelists. First is Vicki Escarra. Vicki is the former president and CEO of Feeding America, the third largest nonprofit of the U.S. and past Chicago Innovation Award winner. Vicki was the former executive vice president and chief marketing officer of Delta Airlines and the former global CEO of Opportunity International, helping poverty-stricken people in developing nations. Vicki recently founded Vicki Escarra, LLC, combining her for-profit and nonprofit experience to help build higher performance communities and organizations. Please welcome Vicki Escarra. Our next panelist, Chris Galvin, is the former chairman and CEO of Motorola. He's also served as chairman of Navtech and CleverSafe. Today, Chris is the chairman and co-founder of Harrison Street Capital and Harrison Street Real Estate Capital and chairman of Gore Creek Asset Management. Chris is a member of the executive committee of Northwestern University's Board of Trustees, and he sits on the Committee of International Economic Policy of the U.S. Department of State. There might be a few of you here who also remember seeing Chris's father, Bob Galvin, as our keynote speaker at the 3rd Chicago Innovation Awards, and he was great. Please welcome Chris Galvin. Our next panelist, Hedy Ratner, or as I call her, the Gloria Steinem of Chicago, is the co-founder and president emerita of the Women's Business Development Center, recognized internationally for its advocacy of women's economic empowerment and for the success of women and minority-owned businesses. Over its 32 years, WBDC has served over 85,000 emerging and established women, minority, and veteran-owned businesses. Hedy is still involved with the WBDC and continues to be an activist for civil, human, and women's rights. Please welcome Hedy Ratner. Our next panelist is Greg Wasson. Greg is the former CEO of Walgreens Boots Alliance, which he led to a record fiscal 2014 sales of $76 billion. I should also mention that Walgreens was a winner in year 1 of the Chicago Innovation Awards. Greg recently founded Wasson Enterprise, a family-owned investment firm focused on angel investing and partnerships. Greg is also on the board of Verizon Communications, the PNC Financial Services Group, and the Healthcare Services Corporation. Please welcome Greg Wasson. And our last panelist is Richard Melman. Rich is the founder and chairman of Let Us Entertain You Enterprises, which owns over 125 restaurants worldwide, many of them right here in the great city of Chicago. Rich's guiding philosophy is to support and make strong commitment to the success of his 7,000 employees. Rich's focus now is to develop the young leaders of Let Us Entertain You to ensure that the company will be around for another 46 years. In 2010, Rich was in a Chicago Innovation Award video where we asked him, how do you practice innovation? And his answer then was, big changes are scary. You should make a change every week with your business, even if it's small. Please welcome Rich Melman. Well, I'm sure excited to be with this amazing group of panelists tonight. And what I'd like to do is ask each of you to just, spend 1 or 2 minutes telling us about the new things that you're doing now and what it was that really got you to do these things now. Vicki, if you wanted to just start, that'd be great.
Sure. So it's good to be with you all. Good evening. I'm into transitioning right now, and what I mean by that is you heard my career. I moved from the corporate world, 15 jobs at Delta Airlines. I actually served as a stint for the mayor of Atlanta in the public sector and then moved into 2 very large nonprofits and sat on several boards. And so as I thought about this next chapter or next season for me, I really wanted to try to use those skills and help other people transition well into the next chapter. And so happy to be involved with a couple of organizations, one called My Next Season. We think we do a really good job of moving executives and leaders either through the company up into something else or out into thinking about other things, as well as the Wasson Consulting Group.
Chris, did you want to?
Thank you. This wasn't a voluntary move that I made. Okay. So I woke up one day, Chairman, CEO of Motorola. The next day I woke up and I'm looking in the mirror, and I reach into the mirror and I go, "Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Chris Galvin. I'm the first employee in my new company." And so that's where we started. I had no idea what to tell this guy in the mirror, what we were going to do, but we then had to go figure it out, which is fun. But I'll make the comment, I'm the luckiest guy. That event wasn't the best, but I'm the luckiest guy in the whole world. And the reason why I'm the luckiest guy in the whole world is I got born into a family that liked to run businesses, that liked to lead innovation, that thought counterintuitively, and therefore they're always breaking the rules, but stood for the highest values and principles. And so as we went to reboot, we just collected all the fundamentals and we said, we'll repeat it again. It'll be small for the first 50 years, but the next 50 years it'll get bigger, and off we went.
Terrific. Hedy?
Well, the first thing that I plan to do is try to avoid having my knees replaced and my hip replaced, and also to find some new doctors. I'm supposed to be retired, but I flunked retirement, and even though I'm trying to be in Florida in the winter, riding my bike doesn't seem to keep me from tearing my hair out over the politics today. But I am obsessed with the culture of sexual harassment and the sexual abuse of power. It's nice to be on this stage because if you like Saturday Night Live, if you may have seen the skit 2 weeks ago called Welcome to Hell. Anybody see it? It was, yes. Me Too is the basis for a cultural and social revolution on the empowerment of women. And my other 32-year obsession is that our economic future is dependent on the increase of women in leadership and economic strength through women-owned businesses. What drove me is the news and ad nauseum, unfortunately, about the historic and current abuse of power of women. This abuse exists throughout our society in entertainment, politics, government, and corporate America. But what has transpired in precipitating a revolution in behavior between men and women. Fear has a lot to do with it. Women are no longer afraid. Now the shoe is on the other foot. This is the new wave, and I hope to advance this revolution with the help of all of you and all of the women who are involved with the Chicago Foundation for Women, Chicago Women Take Action, and the Women's Business Development Center. One more, just sexual harassment, one thing. Sexual harassment training won't stop it. I'd like to see, and we need, a code of conduct, yes, a code of conduct within every industry, trade, institution, and in the halls of government to be signed by every employer, every employee, and every vendor. And it should include a mission and values statement as part of that code. And that's what I'm about these days.
Thanks, Vicki. Hedy, thank you. I just wish you would express your opinion once in a while. That's all. Great.
Here, here. So I've having the great opportunity to be able to work with my family in a family enterprise that we've formed since I retired. Like Chris, I had the good fortune of having a 35-year career in corporate America. Had a great time, every step of the way. And really what led me to the next chapter were my oldest daughter and son-in-law. Both had spent 5-6 years in the corporate world, advancing moving up the corporate ladder as most like to do. And they came to my wife and I at one point in time and said, we've got these ideas for a couple of businesses, would you seed us? And how do you refuse that, right? So we did, but it made me think about just forming a family enterprise, bringing their businesses under the umbrella, and beginning to do multiple things. And we began to try to figure out how to, kind of dip our toe in the water and learn this new, non-public world, and began to do early stage investing in sectors that we know of. And then it kind of led to, fast forward 2.5 years, and we're having a lot of fun working together. We're working with some big companies now where we commercialize their IP for them. But the most important thing, like I guess Chris said, I'm just having a blast working with the family. That's what led me to do this.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. Rich?
Well, I'm doing today what I've done for the last 46, going on 47 years. I work on my personal development. I work on the development of our people. And I work on the development of restaurants. Simple.
And you're still doing it, big time. Terrific. Well, Rich, let me just ask you this. You've built a legacy of hard work, generosity, and respect, and especially among your employees and your partners. And it's no secret that this is the precise kind of legacy that we would all want to strive for. But it's hard, and few people accomplish it. So what's kept you so grounded in your values while growing this significant enterprise?
I think a lot of things have kept me grounded. You don't have to be any genius to succeed in the restaurant business. I think you have to work hard. You have to have a little bit of awareness. I think I'm painfully aware of what I'm not good at. In fact, I've often said to our people, if I was to take a test with all the other restaurateurs in Chicago, an IQ type test, about food and wine and a lot of other things, I'd probably be right in the middle. What I'm good at is just a sort of a narrow field, but I'm real good at the stuff that I'm good at. And I think I'm emotionally developed. And I like to think I'm aware. And it's just sort of easier not to be haughty and not to think you're so terrific. And I'm always thinking of the things that I've messed up on. I say to our people that I've probably made more mistakes than anybody in the restaurant business in the country, not only in Chicago. We've opened over 260 restaurants in our career, and I always say, if I get 70% right, I'm doing good. The key is to change that 30% as quickly as you can. So think of all the 30% that I've made mistakes with. So I think it keeps me grounded.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Vicki, Chris, and Greg, you each have found yourselves in the unique position of transitioning from being the CEO of a major company or companies to starting your own ventures. How did you determine what your next move was going to be, and what fear did you have in doing that?
I'll start. It's interesting. One of my former directors, when I had made the decision to retire after we'd done the big deal, he came to me and he said, Greg, I'm going to give you some advice that, one of my former directors gave me, and I hope it's, you had the same, feel like you have the same relationship with me that I had with this director, which I did, And he said, you have to decide whether you want to do a thing or things going forward. He said, figure that out on your own. He told me to figure it out on my own. And it's obviously pretty simple, right? Do you want to go, become a CEO of another public company and do a thing, or do you want to do a portfolio of things? And I thought a lot about that. My wife and I walking to the beaches of Naples and so forth. And frankly, I had the good fortune of going from an intern out of pharmacy school all the way to the CEO after 35 years. Never dreamed I would get there like Rich. I don't really have any special expertise, but learned the business. And I thought, what? It would be awesome to kind of do the portfolio things and broaden my knowledge base, because I was very deep in healthcare, very deep in retail, very deep in pharmacy. And I also thought that, when you're with a company 35 years, your associates become like family. And there's no way, I could ever, even if I wanted to go to run another big public company, ever have that same relationship. So that's what drove me, to kind of move to the portfolio things. We're doing some great stuff, having some fun things, and we're learning a lot together.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Chris?
Let's see. So interestingly enough, in life, a lot of times there aren't a lot of choices, because if your orientation to leadership is a service, almost immediately upon the events that happened at Motorola, I had to begin serving the family, a little bit like Greg here. And so we decided that I got very busy because we decided we did not want to leave a nickel in Motorola Incorporated, because a few of us had tested my successor. So we had to get about the process of building a fairly large investment company to sell the Motorola stock and redeploy it in a very different set of ways. So we got to work right away, and not for 1 nanosecond did I think I would be that kind of investor, but that was required. And we didn't get into deciding what we'd like to do for ourselves until 2 or 3 years afterwards, because we needed to serve the family first.
And what fear did you have at that time?
Let's see. I didn't have a lot of fears from that standpoint, because I, like Greg, had so many failures that I was really tested on failures. Okay, so I was kind of resilient to that, kind of a thing. If we made a mistake, we just tried to say, oops, and then we admitted it, and then we tried to go fix it later. So that wasn't as big of an issue. When I tell people about how do you reboot, the most terrifying thing you'll ever see in your entire life is a blank sheet of paper. And by the way, for all the reasons people don't think of, and that is, most people say, well, there's nothing on it. They say, no, the reason why it's terrifying, there are too many things to put on it. And then how do you sort that out? So, but you have to work your way through that process.
That's great. Thanks. Vicki?
So I feel like I've had 3 chapters, now 4. The first 30-year career of Delta Airlines as well started as an entry-level person and worked my way up to the chief marketing officer. And I was appointed the chief marketing officer in charge of pricing, planning, and sales a week before 9/11. So I went from thinking I had the best job in the world to, oh, dear God, what's next? But I stayed in that role for another 4 years, and then had the good fortune of actually going, as I said, to work for the mayor of Atlanta for a year. And that was a really great move for me, because I learned from her to really rebalance my life. And she was doing a lot of work in the Atlanta inner city, a lot of work on education. And we went into every senior graduating class that year. The graduation rate in Atlanta for seniors was about 50%. And she made it her goal to see that they got a job, went into some kind of education, gave them all her cell phone. And then she said, Vicki, you take all the calls. So of course the calls start ringing. She gave them her credit card. I'm thinking, oh my God. But I remember distinctly looking at her and saying, why are you doing this, Mayor? And she looked right back at me and said, because I believe in the power of what one person can do. And when are you going to take what I think are some pretty good executive management skills and do something really good with your life? And how much money is enough money? And I say that to you because it really resonated with me. I came from a lower middle class family. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And so that was the path that took me to really the CEO of two great nonprofits, about 5.5 years at both, astronomical growth because of great teams, wonderful people surrounding me. And so it's just been a really interesting now transition to this phase, to stop, to think about what's next, to think about, what do I really want to do with this next chapter, because we all have, fortunately for us, the ability to have next chapters.
Great.
Tom?
Great. I got my own question for you, Hedy. I got my own question for you.
No, I want to talk about failures. No. Okay. So I've had a lot of failures. I have to tell you about my failures. My first career began as a secretary. My second was I was a PR person for Rich Melman for food. Then I was a teacher. That was to be my life's work. And then all of a sudden, I went to class one day and I realized I'm a really, really poor teacher. Then I went, had a graduate degree and a job in educational administration. I didn't like that very much. Then on to a master's degree from the University of Chicago in library science. Me a librarian? I don't think so. Then I was in Washington under President Carter. That lasted a year. Reagan came in and I went out. In between, I got married once. That didn't work very well. And then I got married again a second time. That didn't work very well either. But then I had a brilliant idea of bringing a film studio to Chicago. That worked out very well. It was a great success for Oprah, not me. But 9 colleges, a lot of professions, and 45 wild and woolly years on a magic carpet ride, I finally married the love of my life 5 years ago. He was 85. No, he was 80, I was 70. And we got married, and we've been happy ever since. But the issue for me has always been doing the things that I love. And failure was not fearful, it was just failure, and you move on from there.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Hedy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I had to get in my failures.
So, what's been the common thread throughout your whole life that you've kind of referred back to, whether it's values, whether it's themes, whether it's things that you enjoy doing, but what's the common thread that kind of links everything together for you personally? Rich, well, go ahead. Anybody. And we don't have to go in order. We don't all have to answer. It's fine. Yep. Rich?
I think for the longest time, I never wanted to be the biggest at the restaurant business, own the most restaurants. People don't believe it when I say that, but it's not my goal. And my goal isn't to be the richest, and it's certainly not to be the most well-known. I think my whole life is whatever I do, I want to do well, to the best of my ability. And I'm very narrow-focused. I don't do a lot of things because I don't think I could do them well, and that would bother me. So I think that's something from the time I was a kid. I picked sports that I thought I'd be good at, and I didn't play things that I wouldn't be good at, even though a lot of my friends were doing it and they thought it would be fun if I joined them. I just stuck with what I was good at. So good or bad, that's what's driven me.
That's great. Others, common themes or kind of common thread in your own life?
Yeah, I think, I guess kind of like Rich, I think certainly through my 35-year career, I just always wanted to be the best at every role that I was in. People ask me all the time when I'm meeting with whether it's college students or young interns and so forth, did you always, want to be CEO? I said, heck no. I had no idea I just always wanted to, every single role I had, And I guess as a kid as well, I just wanted to do the best I possibly could in that role, keep my eye on the ball, and let the chips fall where they did. And so when I'm talking to folks today, that's kind of what I try to encourage. Don't set your sights somewhere, that, is too long of a game. Take a step at a time, and then take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way, or at least consider every opportunity that comes your way, because you never know where they may take you. Probably the common theme is I've always loved innovation. Always been kind of an entrepreneur at heart, whether you're with corporate America, it's entrepreneur, whether it's externally, it's entrepreneur. It's always looking for growth and entrepreneurism.
Me too, Greg.
Yeah.
I agree.
Good for you.
So I would say for me, just highly inquisitive and a lifelong learner, which is very much in line with the other comments that have been made, but just a thirst to learn new and different things has been a real hallmark for my life.
So for us, and for me, it's the opportunity to reflect the world's highest principles and values and create a culture where good people can do great things and great people can do extraordinary things. And leading that environment has always been an intrigue to me, because it isn't necessarily easy. But so that's how we orient ourselves. And then the last thing is innovation is hard. It's a matter of survival. It is a function of doing most of the time the opposite thing you think you should do. And so John is right here in front, a great Motorola engineer and executive or whatever, and we were always trying to take the most renegade approach we could take to any market, any technology roadmap, and standing up against conventional wisdom, I thought was an important thing to do.
Oh, that's a neat one. Yeah, great. Thank you. Hedy?
For me, I've been obsessed pretty much all of my life with civil rights and human rights and women's rights, and especially women's personal, professional, and economic empowerment. And there are a number of issues that have kind of gone through my life that continue today. Unfortunately, it's the same damn issues that I've been dealing with for the last 50 years. Access to quality health care and reproductive health, raising awareness about the rights of women and overcoming the abuse of power against women, increasing the role of women in leadership and in business, both in the private and the public sector, access to education, full economic opportunities to women, preventing violence against women, and the alleviation of poverty and racism, and the intersectionality of feminism to include all women.
Great. Terrific. Yeah, Rich?
Can I add one thing as I was thinking about the question? If I was to say, is there one word at Let Us Entertain You that sums up how we feel, the word is caring. It's caring about the food and caring about the people and caring about the sanitation and caring about yourself. And we preach that an awful lot, that we always want to be a caring organization.
Love it. Thank you. Terrific. Great answers. This is wonderful. So in April of this coming year, my wife of 41 years, Susan Kuczmarski, and I have our 11th book coming out called Lifting People Up, The Power of Recognition. How have you lifted people up within your own organizations, and what advice as it relates to leading people within your own organizations would you give to this great audience?
Well, what's happened is Lettuce has developed is we've developed all these advanced classes for our management people. In fact, every year we take the top 20 managers and we put them in this accelerated program. And one of the programs that we've done over the years is how do you get the most out of your people? And it really doesn't cost anything to recognize people and to let them know when they've done a great job. And I often say it also gives you the permission to let them know when they haven't done a good job. And the key is to get them wanting the positive recognition. So we work on it in many, many different ways, starting with when the day starts, saying hello to people and remembering what they've talked to you about, even if you have to write it down. If someone says their mother's in the hospital, next day or 2 days later, ask them how their mother's doing. It's a very simple common courtesy, and it goes on and on.
Love it. Thanks. Greg?
I'll give maybe one example from my former career and then one from Wasson Enterprise. I think it's as simple as how you treat people, and how you come across and so forth. And an example that I used to always try to live by and model and recommend to our folks within the company was, there are everybody in a drugstore is important, and no one is any less important, whether you're in the pharmacy or at the front of the store. And just in some respects, the front cashier in a Walgreens store or any retail store is probably the most important person in the entire store. Because you can walk into a store that is in so-so condition, but if the customer leaves and had a great experience from that front cashier, they will leave and say, that was a great store. Whereas they could walk into a store that was in superb condition, have a poor experience with that front cashier, and leave there and say, that's a crappy store. So I think it was just, so I spent a lot of time with the folks on the front line trying to understand from them and making them, at least feel like they were as important as anybody else. With Wasson Enterprise, it's kind of fun. When we first started, I began to think about, I've got my network of, I could begin to pull people in and so forth. And then it hit me. My wife and I were talking one night, my oldest son and my oldest daughter and son-in-law are really running the business, and I'm trying to help them grow it into a sustainable, multi-generational family business. So we said, they should be bringing in the team of the future. They should be setting the culture that they want this organization to be, or else I'm going to be sitting here 15 years from now having the same kind of conversation. So, it's really empowering them to create the culture that they want to create for the future.
That's great. Thank you. Hedy?
I think, again, the issue of empowerment, and it's exactly what you said, recognition and empowerment, and compassion and understanding and support of your employees. The Women's Business Development Center, which is now 32 years old, that I don't run anymore, and is doing better than when I ran it, has now 40 employees and in 5 states. It's harder, I think, now because we're spread out and we're not there. But to nurture your employees, to be sure that they are recognized for what their skills and their strengths are, allow them to be innovative and to have the initiative to do the things that they can do, that you may not have hired them for, but you learn if you give them, I think, the recognition, the understanding, and the support, they can do far, far more. And I think that's probably the most crucial thing in having a successful organization. But of course, ours were nonprofit, so salary wasn't it.
Great. Chris, how about you? Or Vicki?
So one of my opportunities to really kind of showcase this particular question, which I love, is when I was moved from operations at Delta Airlines into the marketing sales part of the business. And the CEO asked if I would lead all the call centers around the world. We had 26 at the time, and we needed to reduce costs by $100 million in the call center area, an overall corporate cost reduction of $1 billion. And I remember saying, I don't know how to run call centers. And he said, this is more about leadership than running call centers. So the net of the story is that I went around in the first 90 days to all 26 call centers around the world and interviewed the people there and said, your jobs are about to be outsourced to India if we don't do something about it. So we set up teams of people that really re-identified what their job was like, re-identified how to improve customer service, how to improve revenue. And so the bottom line is we got to $100 million through their work. That was in 1996. I'll never forget it because It was when Atlanta and Delta hosted the Olympics. And we had 100 slots for people to run the Olympic flame. And so you had to be nominated by your colleagues to run the torch through the city of Atlanta. So I was the only officer in the company that was elected to run the flame on behalf of my team and reservations. And so I think it's the net of that story is that not only is it setting up systems so that people can know that you appreciate them, but it's actually stepping back from them, turning the reins over to them so that they can define their own destiny.
Super. Thank you. Rich and I were talking a little bit before that neither one of us are going to retire, heaven's sakes. And in fact, I even said a great book that's called Unretirement is perhaps the better name for this. What do we need to do to encourage older adults to reshape and reframe the rest of their lives? What thoughts do you have on that topic?
Well, let's see. I mean, all of us who've had a chance to be in leadership positions are trying to encourage folks to take their own initiative, use their creativity, organize their teammates in collegial ways, and treat people with dignity and respect. And so if there are people that genuinely have that ingrained in their soul, so to speak, you can encourage them to share with others. And the funny thing about risk is, and unfortunately we think about risk a little differently than other people, we sort of say, if you don't take this action, if you don't jump out and give it a try, things are going to be worse, and therefore you have an obligation to do it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Rich?
Well, if you're lost, find a good therapist. If you want to be an entrepreneur, I could give you some things that I would recommend.
What are those?
Well, I think you start out with needing a certain amount of intelligence. It doesn't mean you have to be Mensa, but you have to be on the ball. I think you need awareness. You know the show Shark Tank? You want to start a business? Go find people that have been successful that you know and have your own little Shark Tank and see what people have to say. You want people that are direct and that would be honest with you. I think you need a tremendous amount of drive. I think that's so important. I know in my case, I have enough awareness to know when I should drop the project, but when I think it has a chance, I'll do anything not to fail. And I'm going to tell you the single most important thing, I think, for success in this world, and it's more than just business. And it's one word, confidence. And confidence doesn't just come about. When I started, I had an idea, and I thought it was right, and it didn't take off for 2 months. And I will tell you, my confidence got shaken badly. And it finally took hold. And if you have enough confidence to get started, you hope for small victories. That's sort of, to me, how you build confidence as an entrepreneur. Nobody goes from zero to $1 billion. There's a lot of steps along the way. There's a lot of mistakes along the way. So those are some of the things that I think about if you want to be an entrepreneur.
Good things to think about. Thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah. For me, the same thing, the one word that kind of dominated my thinking every time I reinvented myself after many failures is tenacity. I just never give up. It's persistence and it's tenacity, like being with a dog with a bone, and that tenacity will always serve you well. And I think just what Richard was saying is you give it your best shot, and you try again, and then you try again, and then you try again, and you learn from each of your experiences. But nothing can take the place of tenacity. It isn't necessarily brains, it isn't necessarily education, talent even. We all know talented people who have never really accomplished anything, or brilliant geniuses that are kind of the derelicts in your family, or education, lots of education, many degrees, and they're not successful. Partly because it takes so much. My father used to call it Sitzfleisch, which is, to be translated, nobody knows what that means, but you just have to stick to it and keep working on it. And I think that helps you move on to whatever you want to reinvent yourself into.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and Greg?
I had the opportunity, I'm not plugging this book because I don't even remember who the author was, but, I read a book a couple years ago called The Portfolio Life that was recommended to me, and there were two key themes. We get back to your question about, how do we get, elders more involved in, doing, additional things. And it really kind of hit me. It said, one, and many of us in this room probably in the same position, have had the good fortune of great careers and progressing, and you raised families, and you've developed a nest egg and so forth. And we're all living longer. People are living to 80 and 90 years old. So the idea of retirement as we knew it, and our fathers knew it, and our mothers knew it, doesn't exist anymore. And shouldn't exist anymore. So it's an opportunity to really sit, and think about, okay, what do I really want to do in my next chapter, and go back and think about, okay, what did I not get to do as I was building my career? What did I enjoy in childhood, and what do I really want the next chapter to be? Because we need the knowledge that, the aging executives and folks in this room have to continue to mentor the next generation up. So I guess just, read that book, but think about the fact that we're all, many of us are living much longer lives, and you can really, really have a great second chapter.
So can I add one thing to that? Yeah, that's really good. Really, really great. So if you think of baby boomers, we're over 70 million, born from 46 to 64. Thank you. I love that. And on average, about 6,000 people are retiring every week. Somebody mentioned that in the opening remarks. I heard that, and I perked up. So back to your comment, you start thinking about all this valuable talent, all this knowledge, and tapping into it so that we can be a great company, country, world is a really, really important thing. I'm with you on that.
Super. Well, now we want to open it up to the audience for questions that you have for our panelists. I've still got one or two left in me, but we really want to open it up to all of you to be able to have a dialogue with this great group. So please just raise your hand, and Paul, we've got microphones for anybody that would like to ask one. Great. Thank you. Just say your name, who we know who you are.
Hi, my name is Lynn Hazen. I'm an executive recruiting, so I'm really into the talent business. I'd like to ask you to comment about the middle generation now who is aging, has lots of experience, and corporate America doesn't want them. This is true.
Well, we want them.
I think it's maybe corporate America isn't where they belong. Maybe they have to reinvent themselves and reprioritize their life and commit to something they're passionate about, as you mentioned, that they love to do, that they didn't have a chance to do in corporations, that they might be able to do because they have the skills and the knowledge and the experience and the energy to do something new and different. So it isn't necessarily to go back into the field that you know and that you worked in, but something that you feel passionate about, something where you feel you can have impact where you couldn't maybe before in the work that you did.
And it might be totally different from what you've done.
There's the invitation. I welcome that.
I think I think it's sort of interesting. I always say this to my senior partners. The senior partners have all the knowledge, experience, and the young partners have all the energy. And I think that's a great combination if you could ever get together. I was talking to a friend of mine, this is about a year ago, that was a retiring lawyer. And I didn't know this, although I've used law firms my whole life. There's sort of a mandatory retirement at God bless you, 65, 67, whatever it was. And I'm saying to myself, unless there's something wrong physiologically, mentally, I think you want those type of people around. And I said to this one friend of mine, I said, I know another guy in the same position. Why don't you guys get together, start a law firm of old lawyers? I said, now the idea is if the average lawyer, decent lawyer is charging $400, charge $200. What the hell? Don't have 25 lawyers, have 4 of you or 5 of you. I said, I'd be real interested in using a law firm like that. So I think somewhere down the line, there's going to be some entrepreneurial people that are over 60 or 65 that still have 15 or 20 good years left that are going to start things like that. I think it's inevitable, and it's probably happening in this country. I'm not out looking for a job or another career, but I'm sure it's happening somewhere.
I agree with you. Experience matches energy. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think Hedy said it well, and and I don't want to belittle that is indeed what's somewhat happening out there. I do think that corporations, private equity, venture capital are looking for energized middle-aged executives that are indeed willing and interested in reinventing themselves and showing how they can bring value. So I think it also the onus is a little bit on the middle-aged executive that you're describing, that frankly, that is absolutely reality, to say, how do I reinvent myself? How do I make sure that whether it's going back into corporate America or private equity or whatever, I can show that I can bring real value. And those that do, I think, are finding good opportunities.
Yeah. Super. Another question from the audience.
I have
Please.
a question. My name is Christine. I'm with Math or Life Ways. We create ways to age well. And I wanted to know how you would define being ageless.
One of the things that I'm proud about that we drove during my tenure was our brand and our jingle, I called it. My advertising marketing people hated it when I called it a jingle, but at the corner of happy and healthy. And I think aging is all about, trying to be happy and trying to maintain your health, because I don't think you have one without having the other. And there's challenges. Some of us, will encounter some health issues along the way that you either can or can't control. But to me, it's being happy and healthy as you age.
If you are healthy, you can do so much. We are all very conscious of that as we age, but age is not necessarily a deterrent. It doesn't require bed rest, for God's sakes. You have to find things that you love and not decide that I'm retired, I'm going to sit in the rocking chair and I'm done. Well, you're not done. What did we say, that if you're, 60 is the new 40 and 70 is the new 50 and 76 is the new 29, right? But, it's what have you cared about all your life that you can have an impact, change your thinking, change your world, change your environment, and all of a sudden you are ageless.
Great. And Vicki?
Yeah, real quickly, I just say, I think it's a great question, and I think we should think about not allowing society to define what age is for us. Not just age, but because we're women or men or black or white or went to this school or that school or whatever, we oftentimes put ourselves in boxes. And I would encourage each of us to step out of a box and not be defined by what society says we are.
Super.
I always take difficult things and break them up into small little things. And ageless is interesting. So one part of being ageless is the physical deterioration that happens to all of us. That's hard to overcome, You do the best that you can. Then there's the intellectual part. There's a lot of people that are older that are right on top of it. And then there's a frame of mind. There's probably 5 other classifications. And then there's that frame of mind that, you could, hey, your joints are going to hurt. You're 65 and 75 and 80, and your joints are going to hurt. You can complain about it, or you can say, hey, if this is the worst thing that happens. So I think that frame of mind part, I don't know what percentage it plays. Maybe it's 45 or 50%. But that's what I think in terms of people that are ageless.
Super. Terrific. Another question, please. Can you get him a mic, Paul?
I'm in both the private equity, the strategy consulting, and we have our own venture capital group. The biggest problem that I see with seniors is they're not proactive. Being smart is not what you know, it's how do you learn and who do you associate with. So you have a personal obligation to challenge your intellectual curiosity, to learn new things, not sit back and wait for somebody to come to you. So go look in the mirror. Yeah, many times, I agree with Chris, a lot of people. There's no substitute for knowledge.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just answering that.
You're, okay.
I was answering her question.
I got you. Okay, great. We got it. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else with a question for the panel? Yes, in the back, I think.
Yes.
Paul?
I have a very simple question. So when you communicate with the young entrepreneur or mentor them, what makes you happy and what makes you unhappy, let's say?
What makes you happy and unhappy as an entrepreneur? Well, that's a good question. Or as a mentor? As a mentor? What makes you happy or unhappy as a mentor? Okay. So when you're a mentor to somebody else.
I don't like people, young people that are always on their phone when I'm trying to mentor them, or that talk too much. I think when you really want to learn, you listen. And when I get people that are like that don't pay attention, I don't talk to them.
Anybody else? Chris?
No, Rich, that's exactly what I was going to say. Do they listen? And if they listen, you can engage in quite a unique relationship, and people will actually try out some of the things you speak of, and it can be very rewarding.
I'll reiterate what these two just said, so maybe that shows it is probably important. I think those that are like a sponge, that listen and try to soak up everything they can and learn from it, are the ones that usually you feel the best about it, and frankly are going to get ahead because they're just soaking it up.
A quick comment, and that is, it's a little bit different than my colleagues here. And that is, I think oftentimes people just don't know what to do. They reach a stage in life and they're leaving one job or going to another, or thinking about what they're going to do in their retirement. And the word retirement is not very well thought of in our world today. And so, I'm shamelessly plugging for a company I work with called My Next Season, because we do put people, very experienced, very senior people, with individuals that are looking for what is the next phase for them. And they're very, very successful people that just need some time and someone to help them through that stage. So I would just say, oftentimes I think advising people that are coming out of, not necessarily executive positions, but positions where they're being sometimes forced out, sometimes they're leaving, there's a gap, and many of us have felt it. You don't quite know what to do with yourself. And having someone walk beside you to assist you oftentimes is exactly what you need.
Terrific. Thank you. Another, Paul?
I just had a question for Chris. Galvin, what's your current business now with regard to Harrison Street Capital Advisors?
Let's see, so we have a variety of businesses. The largest business is in real estate. So this is this kind of going elsewhere definition of leadership, or standing against the crowd, or being a renegade, or whatever it is. On my father's watch at Motorola, Six Sigma quality was invented. We applied Six Sigma as a philosophy and a process to design a real estate financial private equity business model. And as a consequence, it was a demographically driven, so it's medical office, student housing, senior housing, and self-storage. And as a consequence of putting those four things together, we had something that we got thrown out of the University of Chicago when we went to talk to them about raising money. And the reason why is because they had never seen it before. So today we're running, we've raised about $10 billion in equity, another $10 billion in debt, so we've got about a $20 billion portfolio at the moment here in Europe, and so that's one business. We run a broad, diversified investment platform for the family, as we sort of redeployed the modal capital into that. That's called Gore Creek Asset Management, and then I've done a whole variety of high-tech things, chairing CleverSafe and NavTech and a variety of things like that, so I keep my finger in the high-tech pie because I enjoy that. And I've got a very diverse set of things I pursue. And some are doing fine and others are, Chris, what were you thinking when you made that investment?
That's great. I've got one last question for this great panel. We were talking about mentors earlier. One of my mentors was W. Clement Stone, who started Aon Insurance and wrote the book Positive Mental Attitude. And I was working with him when he was age 75, and he said, Tom, one of my biggest problems is going to be, I've come up with my list of people for my 100th birthday party, but they probably won't be around. What am I going to do? I said, Mr. Stone, don't worry about that. Well, he lived to be 103 months old, and I contend that positive mental attitude is one thing that I think is so fantastic. Share with us the name of one of your mentors, one of your personal mentors to you.
Bob Galvin.
Bob Galvin. Okay, great. Rich?
Well, I think it's important for young entrepreneurs to have mentors. Jerry Orzov was my best friend, who I started in business with, died in 1981. And I know in my heart that I'd never be where I am without Jerry. He used to say, when people would say, well, what do you do in the partnership? And he used to say, Richard takes care of the restaurants, and I take care of Richard.
Love it, love it. Hedy?
Well, since I've been involved in the women's movement and the empowerment of women for over 50 years, I think you introduced me saying Chicago's Gloria Steinem. She was definitely a role model for me, somebody I admired a great deal. And she continues, and she's even older than me, and she continues empowering others, being concerned about the least of us, knowing what the issues are and what people care about. And I would say Gloria Steinem.
Terrific.
The other is my mother, who was an independent, strong woman, way before her time. She was an immigrant. But my mother used to say to me, Hedy, dear, you can't change the world. And I think I said to her, yes, I can, Mom. And I wish you were here today.
That's great. Greg? Or Vicki?
Sure. So the one that comes to mind for me is David Taylor. He's currently the CEO for Procter & Gamble and has a lot going on for those of you who are following that company. But he happened to be the chair of the board when I was at Feeding America. And we recreated the brand there. And one of his favorite quotes that I love is, great brands are built, they're not made. And so I learned a lot about brand building and team building through him.
Super. And Chris? No.
Throughout life, like Chris, I would have been my dad. And 35-year Walgreens career is a guy by the name of Jerry Carlin, who, when I was a summer intern at Purdue, spent the summer in Deerfield, and Jerry's running a little department called Health Services, and he just came in and out of my life, throughout my career, at times where I really didn't understand why he was suggesting I go do something or move across the country to Las Vegas or take on a new division and so forth. But he always, it's interesting. I had to trust him, because I never understood why. But I look back, every single time he came in, it was something that was good for me that I didn't realize at the time. And again, I think that's what is about being a good mentor. You got to build trust.
Love it. Wow. Thank you all so very, very much tonight.